Hi, my name is Hal Reevely. In my film, to some degree, is about life itself. We were all children once, born with the purest of innocence. We had no biases based on other people's opinions. We had our whole life ahead of us. We were full of laughter, dreams, and ambitions. But those dreams weren't based on any form of reality because we didn't have any life experience to base that on. But as we grew older and wiser, we came to understand what our true interests were and what our talents were. And we refined those ambitions and dreams. And for some of us, we were able to achieve them, be they career or family and life, or ambitions like going to the Olympics. For others, however, they never were given a chance right from the start. First Nations children going to the residential schools come to mind. At some point in our lives, perhaps all of our lives, we'll experience some set of circumstances or unexpected events that will change the course of our life. Most of us will recover from that. Some of us won't. This film is about the stories people have to tell, which in most cases explains how they got to where they are. I hope you enjoy the film as much as I did in producing it, and I hope that you get something positive from it. Thank you for watching. Behind me is an old Chinese temple. It's probably been here for many years. It's full of incense smoke, and there's copper plates hanging from the ceiling. Inside there's a monk who offers the opportunity to have your reading done. My wife, having had many readings in her lifetime, almost all of them having some degree of accuracy and some amazingly accurate, plus the fact that she has her own psychic abilities, for her it was a no-brainer to accept that offer. She was handed a tin full of small, tiny sticks. You shake the tin until one pops out, and that forms the basis of your reading. She handed it to the monk, who looked at it, and then took us outside. My wife noticed that he was rather pale and white looking after we got outside, and he said to us, "It's not a very good reading. You probably don't want to hear it." Of course, we had just been on a 2-month vacation, so of course we were excited to hear what it had to say. There was a long pause, and then he said, "It's like being out in the ocean by yourself in the middle of a storm, and the storms keep coming, one after another, relentlessly." And then he paused again and he said, "That's all I feel comfortable telling you." And that was the reading. Earlier today, we arrived in Vancouver after a long flight from Hong Kong. We were unexpectedly met by our youngest daughter at the airport. First, she told us that everyone, including the dogs, were all fine, but that there had been a fire earlier that day in the house was dead. This is what we arrived home to, still smoldering and hot. There's nothing left of our beautiful home that we've been renovating for many years. We created a 5-bedroom home out of a large structure that was a home, gallery, and many working rooms for 2 artists. A part of us died today, and our life is forever changed. Well, a house can be rebuilt. We can't get back all the pictures and movies of us as children in our early lives growing up. I, for example, had been entrusted with my family's photo albums and old Super 8 movies. We also lost all their pictures and videos of our own children growing up, including their figure skating, TV interviews, many family vacations, backyard birthday parties, and all their friends. We also lost a large collection of artwork and jewelry, family heirlooms to be passed along to our grandchildren. After seeing the site of where our home once stood, we went to the fire hall to thank the firemen personally. I had noticed when we drove by earlier that the lights were on. I interrupted their debriefing meeting and thanked them for their efforts. There was a lot of blank, shocked looks on their faces. We knew many of them, and several of them had been entertained in our house many times. A few years later, we headed to the temporary accommodations that had been arranged for us by somebody in the community. My wife and daughter spent hours looking for some of the lost jewelry, but found nothing salvageable. On occasion, I would dig around. I found the ring I was looking for. It was black, but I was able to get it cleaned and repaired, and it was the only thing we found. The fire was extremely hot. A wood frame house, but it also had a lot of big timbers in the ceiling. It had thick cedar siding, and most of it was on one floor, so it was a big sprawling structure with lots of wood. It also had some stacked lumber in part of the enclosure that was being used to renovate the home. So we didn't just lose the house and everything around the house, but we also lost a number of big trees, 9 big Douglas fir trees, a number of ornamental trees, rhododendrons. Anything within 100 feet of the house was either scorched or killed. And a car that was about 50 to 75 feet away from the home, one side of it was melted, so it was a write-off. So there was a lot more damage to the property. And of course the cleanup from all the falling of all the branches and stuff really tore up a lot of the property. So we had lots to deal with in addition to the house. So after the fire, I'm not sure that we were really able to totally take in and comprehend what had happened to us. Obviously we were shocked, probably in shock and devastated at losing everything, but I think we were more in the mindset of how do we move forward from here. We had to look after getting accommodations, we had to get things going with the insurance company. So the very next morning I walked the fire site and the insurance people were on their way over, and I noticed that something was moving in the koi pond. I expected that they had blown out when the viewing window blew out, but they had been down at the bottom and survived. So anyways, when the insurance people arrived, we quickly got a tote, locally got a big tote, put them in the tote, got it filled with water, obviously water first. And then somebody local heard about our plight, and he set up a filtration system to keep them alive until we found a new home for them, which he did. That afternoon he got a hold of a couple in Campbell River, and they literally dug a big pit in their backyard by hand and set it up to be a koi pond to keep our fish alive. And so I understand now our koi have been moved to a proper pond, but at least they survived the fire. About a week and a half after the fire, while we were dealing with insurance and making that endless list of things that we had lost and starting to try and redesign the house on paper, our youngest daughter phoned us and told us that she had gotten my sister admitted to the hospital. And having read the charts, she told us that it's not good, that we should drop everything and head over. And so that's what we did. We dropped everything and told the insurance we'd be out of town for an undetermined period of time. And we headed to Langley, where my sister was in the hospital. When we got there, she was in good spirits. She just thought she would go through cancer treatment and be better by the summertime. But that first morning I talked to the doctor outside her room, and he explained to me that she probably only had a matter of weeks or at most maybe a month left to live. And I think after maybe a week or less than a week, my sister probably figured that out too, though she never said that. But I know she immediately went to work to getting all of her charity in order and getting someone else who would take up the cause that she had started and keep it going. My sister passed away about, well, I guess it was a month and a day after the fires when she finally passed away. She was unconscious for most of the last week though. My sister was a very selfless person who never wanted to take credit for anything. She mostly just cared about other people. I knew that she had been helping two of the girls that lived across the street out of a family of 6, and she put them through university. One's a high school teacher and one's a nurse. She could have helped other kids too, but I know for sure those two she helped. But another thing I found out too is she'd won this big citizen award, and it was signed off
the big plaque she got signed off by all levels of government. So it was a big deal and quite an honor, but she never spoke much about that. She wasn't big on bragging or acknowledging her own accomplishments. And another thing too, she had set up a program for adult education, and it had been presented at international conferences, and yet she didn't want to take any of the credit. She got somebody else that had helped her do what she was doing to present it at these conferences. Yet it was her project, her baby that she looked after. So that was another big hit to both my wife and I, because my wife was quite close with my sister, and of course she was my last living relative. Another thing that hit us that was devastating was between the fire and my sister passing away, we suffered another very devastating loss, something that would have wiped most people out. But a friend of mine who was the first person that I met him on a ferry going into Paul River for my very first permanent job. And he became a very close friend of mine and stayed a friend of mine for all those years. He passed away suddenly of a heart attack. I'd known him for over 40 years, and he was part of a group of friends. So that was very sad that he died so suddenly like that. He was mountain biking with a bunch of friends, some of whom were part of that group of friends that I knew from 40 years ago. Unfortunately, the storms continued because we got more bad news. Later that winter, I knew another friend of mine had been struggling with cancer, but he seemed to be doing fairly well. I'd seen him earlier on in the summer, but I'd been out of town in December, and I heard that he was now in the hospital and not doing that well. So as soon as I got back to town, which I think was maybe later that day, that next morning I got up early and got the first ferry over to Paul River. I got to the hospital, and his wife and one of his daughters was there, and unfortunately he passed away about, I'd say, 5 to 10 minutes after I got there, and help her get the word out to all the other people that had been helping out with the family and with him. So that was the end of our 2019, just one storm, one bad thing after another. But so we thankfully have survived everything that was thrown at us. We've dealt with it emotionally. We've moved on, looking forward to a bright new future in our new home.
Much of this film has been about a story about what happened to us. But our story in no way compares to the story of those who have lost a spouse or a child, who've suffered through physical or sexual abuse at any age, have had life-altering injuries, have fallen to drug addiction, suffer from severe depression, or have a total loss of self-worth or anything that leaves one homeless. It was simply our story.
As I noted at the beginning of the film, many of us have stories that will explain where we are in life at any given moment. The people of the streets in cities across the world, they live a tough life with nothing to their name. I'm quite certain this was not one of the dreams they envisioned for their future when they were children, in a field with their friends. No, something has happened to them somewhere along the line that put them where they are now. Perhaps it was child abuse, getting hooked up with the wrong crowd, getting the disease of addiction or mental health, or maybe they took a gamble and it didn't pay off. They lost their money as a result, or they lost their job, their house, and their family. I'm quite certain all of them have a story to tell, but who would listen to them? Maybe all we should be doing is at least give them some empathy for a life gone terribly wrong. I hope you enjoyed my little film about stories and think differently about the people who have endured the bad ones. We're still in a fifth-wheel trailer, but at least our house is being built now, and life has gone on pretty much as normal over the last year or so. We were the lucky ones. We survived, and we're going to be just fine.
I want to thank my wife for her patience and understanding while I relived 2019 in this film over and over and over. Ben Sound for great music selection, Pexel's campus production for the video clips of the children at the start of the film, friends and especially our family who came together with us and spent time with us right after the fire and have looked after us and kept boosting our energy and kept us going. Our Quadra community for clothes, food, and offerings of accommodations in the weeks that followed the fire. And especially our firemen at the fire department who fought this fire as best they could. It was an awful situation for them watching somebody's house burned to the ground throughout a long and tiring ordeal. Thank you.